Yet life in Indonesia also gave him joy. He learned the language, played with neighborhood children, and absorbed the rhythms of a foreign culture. His mother taught him at home in the early mornings, instilling discipline and a love for learning. She believed deeply in education as a tool for empowerment, a belief Barack would carry throughout his life. At the age of 10, Barack returned to Hawaii to live with his grandparents. His grandmother, Madeline Dunham, was practical and hardworking, while his grandfather, Stanley Dunham, was strong-willed and outspoken. They represented middle-class America. Values of responsibility, honesty, and perseverance shaped their household. At Punahou School, an elite private school, Barack stood out, not just for his intelligence but for his race. He was one of the few black students, and for the first time, he began to confront questions about identity in a more painful way. Subtle racism, awkward silences, and moments of isolation forced him to look inward. Who was he really? Where did he belong? During his teenage years, Barack struggled with confusion and anger. He searched for acceptance, sometimes in the wrong places. Yet books became his refuge. He read voraciously James Baldwin, Langston Hughes, Malcolm X. Through words, he began to understand the black experience in America and his place within it. One book in particular, the autobiography of Malcolm X, struck him deeply. It was not just a story of anger, but of transformation. Barack realized that identity was not something fixed. It could be shaped, questioned, and redefined. By the time he graduated high school, Barack was no longer just a quiet observer. He was thoughtful, curious, and determined to find meaning in his life. He left Hawaii to attend Occidental College in Los Angeles, carrying with him unanswered questions about race, justice, and purpose. At college, Barack's mind expanded rapidly. He engaged in political discussions, protested apartheid in South Africa, and began to understand the power of collective action. He was no longer satisfied with ideas alone. He wanted change. After transferring to Columbia University in New York, he immersed himself in the city's diversity and contradictions. He studied political science, but life outside the classroom taught him just as much. Walking the streets of Harlem and Manhattan, he saw wealth and poverty existing side by side, an American paradox that troubled him deeply. When he graduated, Barack faced a choice: pursue a comfortable career or follow a more difficult path. He chose the harder road. He moved to Chicago to work as a community organizer, job that paid little but promised purpose. In neighborhoods devastated by factory closures and neglect, Barack listened to people's frustrations, hopes, and dreams. He learned that real change did not come from speeches alone, but from patience, trust, and action. It was in Chicago that Barack Obama truly found his calling. Part 2, From Community Organizer to Rising Political Star. Chicago in the mid-1980s was a city of sharp contrasts. Towering skyscrapers symbolized wealth and ambition, while entire neighborhoods on the South Side struggled with unemployment, crime, and neglect. It was into this divided landscape that Barack Obama arrived in 1985, a young man with a slim resume, a powerful sense of purpose, and an unshakable belief that change was possible. As a community organizer, Barack worked with churches and local leaders to help residents fight for better housing, job opportunities, and education. The work was slow and often frustrating. Meetings ended without results. Promises from politicians went unfulfilled. People were tired of hoping. Yet Barack listened more than he spoke. He knocked on doors, sat in living rooms, and learned the stories of steelworkers who had lost their jobs, single mothers struggling to raise children, and young people who felt abandoned by the system. He realized that leadership was not about commanding others. It was about empowering them. Still, he faced doubts, both from others and within himself. Some questioned whether a young outsider could truly understand the pain of the community. Others doubted that organizing alone could bring lasting change. Barack himself wondered whether he was making enough of a difference. These doubts pushed him toward the next step in his journey. In 1988, Barack left Chicago to attend Harvard Law School, one of the most prestigious institutions in the world. For the first time, he found himself surrounded by some of the brightest minds in the country. The environment was competitive, intense, and often intimidating. At Harvard, Barack distinguished himself not through arrogance, but through calm intelligence and thoughtful debate. He had a rare ability to see multiple sides of an argument, to build bridges rather than burn them. This quality soon set him apart. In 1990, he achieved something unprecedented. He became the first African-American president of the Harvard Law Review. The news sent shockwaves through academic and political circles. For many, it was a symbol of progress, a sign that barriers, though still strong, could be broken. Yet Barack did not allow the title to define him. He viewed it as a responsibility rather than a trophy. He worked to unite students with different ideologies, proving that cooperation was possible even in deeply divided spaces. After graduating magna cum laude in 1991, Barack returned to Chicago, not to chase prestige, but to serve. He worked as a civil rights lawyer and taught constitutional law at the University of Chicago. His classroom became a place of lively discussion, where students were encouraged to question authority and think critically about democracy. It was also in Chicago that Barack met Michelle Robinson. Michelle was intelligent, confident, and grounded, everything Barack admired. Their relationship grew slowly, built on mutual respect and shared values. She challenged him, supported him, and kept him connected to reality even as his ambitions grew. In 1992, Barack helped organize voter registration, drives that brought thousands of new voters, many from marginalized communities, into the democratic process. He saw firsthand how participation could transform apathy into empowerment. Gradually, friends and mentors began to encourage him to run for office. Barack was hesitant. Politics, he knew, was messy and often disappointing. But he also understood that lasting change required a seat at the table, where decisions were made. In 1996, Barack Obama ran for the Illinois State Senate and won. As a state senator, he focused on practical reforms, expanding health care for low-income families, reforming the criminal justice system, and supporting education. He worked across party lines, earning respect even from political opponents. Still, his journey was not without setbacks. In 2000, he ran for the U.S. House of Representatives and lost. The defeat was painful and humbling. For a moment, it seemed like his political dream might end before it truly began. But Barack did not give up. He returned to the state Senate wiser, more focused, and more determined. He refined his message, not one of anger or division, but of unity and shared responsibility. He believed America was strongest when it embraced its differences rather than feared them. By the early 2000s, Barack Obama was no longer just a local leader. His ideas, his voice, and his vision were gaining national attention. The stage was being set for something far greater. Part 3: The National Stage and the Road to the Presidency. By 2004, Barack Obama's name had begun to circulate beyond the borders of Illinois. Though still relatively unknown on the national stage, his calm demeanor, thoughtful speeches, and ability to unite people from different backgrounds were quietly setting him apart in a deeply divided political climate. That year, Barack ran for the United States Senate. His campaign was not flashy, but it was deeply disciplined and message-driven. He spoke about responsibility, opportunity, and unity, ideas that resonated with voters who were exhausted by cynicism and political warfare. But it was not the campaign alone that changed everything. At the Democratic National Convention in Boston, Barack Obama was chosen to deliver the keynote address. For many Americans, this was their first time hearing him speak. As he stepped onto the stage, few could have predicted the impact of what would follow. He spoke not as a partisan, but as an American. He rejected the idea of red states and blue states, declaring instead that there was only the United States of America. His words carried hope without sounding naive, and realism without bitterness. In one night, Barack Obama became a national figure. The speech was replayed across the country. Commentators called him a rising star. Ordinary citizens felt something they had not felt in a long time, a sense of possibility. Later that year, Barack won the Senate election in a landslide. As a U.S. Senator, he entered Washington with humility. He understood that symbolism alone was not enough. Policy mattered. He focused on ethics reform, nuclear non-proliferation, veterans' benefits, and health care. He worked across party lines, believing that progress required dialogue, not demonization. Yet Washington tested him. The machinery of politics moved slowly. Compromise was difficult. Idealism often collided with reality. Barack sometimes faced criticism, from the left for being too cautious, and from the right for being too progressive. Still, his voice remained steady. Behind the scenes, a larger question loomed. Was America ready for something unprecedented? In 2007, Barack Obama announced his candidacy for President of the United States. The announcement was met with skepticism. He was young. He was relatively inexperienced, and he was asking the nation to elect its first African-American president. But Barack did not run on his identity alone. He ran on a vision. His campaign was built around two simple yet powerful words: hope and change. Millions of people, young voters, minorities, independents, were drawn to his message. Grassroots volunteers organized in neighborhoods. Small donors fueled the campaign. Technology and social media transformed political engagement. Yet the road was far from easy. During the Democratic primaries, Barack faced his toughest challenge, Hillary Clinton. The race was intense, competitive, and at times deeply personal. Every speech, every debate, every mistake was magnified. There were moments when defeat seemed inevitable. But Barack remained disciplined. He focused on long-term strategy, building coalitions, and maintaining a positive tone. When controversies arose, he addressed them directly rather than avoiding them. One such moment came when issues of race threatened to derail the campaign. Instead of retreating, Barack delivered a powerful speech on race in America. Honest, nuanced, and unifying. It was a defining moment, reminding the nation that leadership required courage. Slowly, state by state, delegate by delegate, the momentum shifted. In June 2008, Barack Obama secured the Democratic nomination. History had already been made, but the most difficult challenge still lay ahead. The general election would test not only his vision, but the soul of the nation itself.